For those who don't know, Midsommar is a 2019 cult horror film written and directed by Ari Aster. The film follows Danny, her boyfriend Christian, and a group of Christian's school colleagues to a commune in Sweden after being invited by their friend Pelle to join in on the Midsommar festivities. Danny and her boyfriend are on the brink of separating as they embark on this trip together, while Danny in particular struggles to hold herself together while coming to terms with the murder-suicide of her parents, committed by her sister, that takes place at the beginning of the film. In the director's cut of Midsommar, the film opens with this image, a detailed account of the procession of rituals that will be seen in the film. We see Danny entangled with her deceased relatives, gripped by the Grim Reaper who represents her doomed fate, followed by an image of Christian consoling her while Pelle watches from above and sketches. Pelle then leads the group to the commune, and the final section displays the various human sacrifice and fertility rituals that are fully enacted during the Midsommar festivities. This isn't the only artistic representation in the film that depicts these rituals. In fact, they are seen multiple times throughout the film. The scenes with images such as these take inspiration from historical artifacts that also depict evidence of human sacrifice rituals as well as prosperity and fertility rituals. Seen here are examples of artifacts found at a ship burial site in Oseberg. According to the National Museum of Denmark, found in the grave was this woven tapestry depicting events of a procession ritual. It is said that a woman, perhaps a queen, was buried in this grave as an earthly representation of the fertility and love goddess Freya. There was also a cart found buried in the grave, and the carvings represent symbols of prosperity. It is said that the cart was used by a Norse fertility cult to transport their deity over the fields in order to secure the yielding of the crops. Taking this history into consideration, the rituals that depict Danny becoming May Queen seem to reflect these Old Norse religious practices. Danny wins the Maypole competition, designating her as the Midsommar May Queen. She is then honored by the commune through a toast and a feast, placed into a cart much like the one found at the ship burial site, and then transported over the fields to bless the crops. They take her to a burial site where they place raw meat into the ground and sing a song of blessings over the earth. Danny holds up a lighted torch with the other women in the cult and then is carried back to the commune in the procession cart. This stone artifact, also found in the National Museum of Denmark, represents a human sacrificial ritual thought to be performed for the god Odin. According to the museum's archives, there are several accounts of human sacrifice that can be found in Old Norse religion, dating back to the prehistorical Viking period. One of these accounts was written by the German monk Adam of Bremen about the sacrificial tradition that takes place every 9 years at Gamla Uppsala in Sweden, where there is a temple devoted to the gods Thor and Odin and the goddess Freya. In this tradition, 9 males, as well as animals, were sacrificed to the gods. According to Adam of Bremen, the human and animal sacrifices would be hung from trees, which you can see depicted in this artifact. According to the museum, the number 9 was of magical significance to the Vikings and was involved in many religious rituals. In the film, Pelle explains how the festival takes place every 90 years and lasts for 9 days, and then there are 9 individuals offered up for sacrifice in the temple at the end of the film, including a bear carcass, but more on that later. Other research on sacrifice and ritual in Old Norse religion details sacrificial feasts in which animals are killed and roasted, and toasts are had with ale and other libations. In Midsommar, there are unspecified animal sacrifices on the feasting table, and there are multiple instances of toasts being made, although they drink a psychedelic concoction as opposed to ale. They use the word skål to toast, stemming from the Swedish word meaning cheers. In this research, the toast is usually being offered towards the king or to the gods, but in Midsommar, the final toast is being offered up to Danny, the May Queen, before the final sacrificial rituals begin. Further research into where these sacrificial rituals take place reveal that many of these rituals are carried out in designated sacred spaces, such as in blessed temples. You can find an example of such a temple here in Midsommar, which can be seen all throughout the film in anticipation of these final moments. According to some literal interpretations of Norse literature, the idea of sacrifice originates as a ritualized gift exchange. A passage from an Eddic poem called Havamal describes the god Odin becoming the victim and the recipient of the sacrifice, and through this he acquires special knowledge, such as, quote, the secret of the runes. This translates well into Midsommar, as there are 2 volunteer sacrificial tributes from the commune that offer themselves for the ritual. They are told that they will be honored and gifted for their sacrifice, although there are no gods specified, and that their bodies will be returned to the earth to bless it. You can also find instances of runes all throughout the film. All 9 sacrifices are placed inside the temple, along with more images of runes, and then the temple is turned into an effigy and burned to the ground, thus returning everything back to the earth. In Sir James Frazer's The Golden Bough, it's speculated that animal sacrifice was intended to nourish the gods, who in turn would provide for a bountiful harvest. This would reflect on the gift-giving nature of sacrifice, which seems to be the motive behind the sacrificial rituals in Midsommar. So finally, let's get back to that image of Christian's body inside the bear carcass. Here we can see that the animal chosen to be sacrificed for the ritual was a bear, and that Christian was chosen to be put inside of the bear. The religious meaning behind this choice of animal may be best explained no longer through Old Norse traditions, but rather through the religious practices such as those of the Aztecs or early Siberians. There are articles written on the history of religions that explain Siberian bear hunting rituals, in which they hunt and capture bears, keep them in the village for several years, and then kill them and eat their bodies, believing that the bear's soul returns to, quote, the master of animals, who will further provide for the community thanks to the sacrifice. There are also Aztec practices such as, quote, the feast of the flaying of men, in which Aztec warriors would transform their victims into sacrificial images, such as in Midsommar, when they're turned into a type of scarecrow or wearing special garments before being placed inside the temple. In the Aztec ritual, they flay their captive victims, sometimes even wearing the skin of their victims. There are glimpses of this practice seen in the film as well, but ultimately, it seems as if Ari Aster derived most of the rituals in Midsommar from Old Norse sacrificial ideologies and practices.